The pain of becoming. Nietzsche's secret about growth through suffering. What if your suffering wasn't a punishment, but a portal? What if the pain you're going through is not the end of your path, but the very beginning of your transformation? Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just talk about suffering, he decoded it. He believed that pain wasn't something to escape from, but something to grow through. In this video, we'll uncover Nietzsche's most powerful secret about personal evolution, the idea that pain is not your enemy, it's your initiation. You'll understand why hardship often precedes greatness, and how embracing discomfort can awaken your highest potential. This is not just philosophy, it's a guide for your inner alchemy. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you've ever felt that life is testing you beyond your limits, you're not alone, and this channel is here to help you turn that pain into purpose. Ready to transform your suffering into strength? Let's begin. Topic 1: The necessary agony. Why pain is not a mistake. Nietzsche believed that pain was not an error in the design of life, but a fundamental condition for greatness. He argued that no significant transformation, whether spiritual, intellectual, or personal, can happen without a certain degree of suffering. To him, pain was a signal that growth was happening beneath the surface. Our modern culture often tries to numb pain or run away from it, but Nietzsche flips that narrative. Pain is not something to escape, it's something to integrate. It's a teacher, a mirror, a sacred fire that burns away the false layers of the self so the deeper truth can emerge. When you experience emotional turmoil, heartbreak, loss, or existential crisis, you're standing at the threshold of a deeper becoming. Nietzsche called this becoming who you are. Not staying who you were, not clinging to comfort, but evolving through discomfort. Think of a seed breaking open underground. That rupture is painful. That darkness is cold. But it's necessary. Without that inner breaking, there is no sprout, no tree, no blossom. Pain is the pressure that cracks the shell of your current identity. Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to reframe our pain, not as something to curse, but as something to learn from. Every wound can be a doorway. Every discomfort, a direction. Every tear, a transformation. The more you resist pain, the more power it has over you. But the moment you face it and ask, "What are you trying to teach me?" you begin to reclaim your power. Pain becomes less a prison and more a path. This doesn't mean glorifying suffering or seeking it unnecessarily. It means recognizing its role in your metamorphosis. Nietzsche wasn't romanticizing pain. He was decoding its purpose. He saw pain as the fertile soil in which character, willpower, and depth of spirit could grow. No philosopher, artist, or spiritual seeker reaches depth without passing through their own underworld. This is the shadow side of growth, often ignored in self-help talk. But Nietzsche didn't hide from the darkness. He explored it with intellectual courage and taught us to do the same. The question is not, how do I avoid pain? But, how do I alchemize it? That's the Nietzschean path. To turn suffering into substance, pain into power, and wounds into wisdom. So next time life gets heavy, ask yourself, what is this pain preparing me for? What part of me is being reshaped? What false identity is dying, so that something truer can rise? And leave your thoughts in the comments. What's one moment of pain in your life that eventually brought unexpected strength? Your story may inspire others who are walking through their own darkness right now. Topic 2: The will to power, pain as fuel for inner strength. One of Nietzsche's most powerful concepts is the will to power, the internal force that drives us to grow, expand, and overcome. He saw pain not as a blockage to this will, but as its raw material. In fact, the more pain you face, the more power you have to transmute it. Pain becomes energy. When channeled, it becomes discipline. It becomes intensity. It becomes spiritual fire. Nietzsche believed that greatness is not born from peace and comfort, but from challenge, tension, and inner battle. When you're at your lowest, you're not powerless, you're potent. You're full of the energy of change. But most people don't realize that. They see pain as weakness, when in truth, it's compressed power waiting to be redirected. Think about the strongest people you know, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. Chances are they've walked through fire. They've tasted despair. And instead of collapsing, they let that pain shape a sharper will. The will to power is not about domination or control, it's about resilience, regeneration, and redefinition. It's about rising when everything tells you to fall. It's about using the energy of your wounds to build inner armor, not walls, but strength. Nietzsche reminds us that every discomfort, every hardship, every crack in your life is a forge. And you are the blacksmith. You decide what you'll become on the other side of that suffering. In this way, pain becomes sacred. It's not just part of life, it's part of your heroic journey. And if you embrace it with presence and awareness, it becomes your initiation into something deeper than survival, it becomes transcendence. There's a quiet strength that emerges when you no longer fear pain. You become less reactive, more focused, less fragile, more intentional. Nietzsche's will to power invites you to walk through the storm not as a victim, but as an alchemist. So ask yourself now, what pain are you carrying that could become power if redirected? What inner battle could awaken your next level of consciousness? Pain will visit us all, but what you do with it, that's your choice. You can suppress it, drown in it, or transform it. Nietzsche chose transformation. Will you? And if this resonates with you, hit that like button and share your experience in the comment. What part of your life feels like a battlefield right now? And what would happen if you saw it instead as a training ground? Typico 3 Becoming Who You Are. The Painful Path to Authenticity. Nietzsche's famous phrase, "Become who you are," may sound like a simple affirmation. But behind it lies a complex and often painful process of peeling off everything that is not truly you. To become yourself, you must confront what you've inherited, what you've been conditioned to be, and what you've pretended to be to survive. Authenticity is not about comfort, it's about courage. It demands that you examine every mask you've worn and every role you've played just to be accepted. And removing those layers hurts, because they've become part of your identity. Many people never become who they truly are because they fear losing the approval that came with their false selves. But Nietzsche teaches us that truth costs something. And that cost is usually pain. The pain of outgrowing old versions of yourself, the pain of disappointing others, and the pain of walking alone for a while. But here's the paradox. The more pain you endure in the process of becoming authentic, the more freedom you unlock. Because now, your actions are not rooted in fear, they are rooted in truth. And that's where real power begins. Nietzsche saw life not as a quest for happiness, but for depth. And that depth comes when you stop pretending to be someone you're not. It's when you stop outsourcing your worth and start reclaiming your essence. The pain of authenticity is sacred. It means you're shedding illusions. It means you're stepping out of borrowed beliefs and walking into your own reality, even if it trembles at first. This process can feel lonely, but it's also liberating. Because once you stop performing, you start connecting, truly connecting with yourself, with others, and with life in its raw form. Becoming who you are is not a destination, it's an unfolding. And each time you choose truth over comfort, soul over status, alignment over approval, you're walking the Nietzschean path of transformation. Ask yourself now, who are you beneath your roles, titles, and expectations? What version of yourself are you afraid to become because it might cost you familiarity or comfort? The pain of authenticity is not a curse, it's a compass. Follow it, and you'll find not just who you are, but why you're here. That is the beginning of your true power. Drop a comment. What mask have you recently removed in your life? What painful truth helped you feel more alive, even if it hurt at first? Typico 4 Amor Fati. Loving the pain that shapes you. Perhaps one of Nietzsche's most radical teachings is the concept of love fati, the love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but embracing it fully, including the pain, loss, and suffering. Imagine loving not only the highs of your life, but also its lowest valleys. This philosophy goes beyond resilience. It's about integration. Amor Fati says, "Don't just survive your pain, honor it. Let it be part of your sacred narrative. Let it refine you, not define you." To love your fate means to stop fighting life's imperfections. It means to look at every wound and say, "This, too, is part of my becoming." Nietzsche didn't teach this to romanticize suffering, but to remove resistance from the very things that grow you the most. When you fight reality, you multiply suffering. But when you embrace it, even the difficult parts, you transmute it. Amor Fati turns pain into peace, and hardship into harmony with existence. Think about a heartbreak that shattered you. At first, it feels senseless. But in time, if you allow it, it may reveal truths about your own depth, your boundaries, your value. Amor Fati is saying, love even that. Because that pain taught you something no joy could. Most people reject what hurts and cling to what pleases. But Nietzsche invites us to go deeper, to see all of life as meaningful, not just the comfortable parts. And that's where your spirit expands. Amor Fati is not passive acceptance. It's an active embrace. It's looking at your scars and saying, "This is part of my masterpiece." It's bowing to the fire that shaped you. When you adopt this mindset, you stop fearing the future. Because whatever comes, joy or sorrow, you trust it's shaping you into who you were meant to become. You become unshakable. This doesn't mean being numb to pain. It means becoming wise through pain. It means living with open arms, even when life punches hard. It means dancing even in the storm. Nietzsche's Amor Fati is a rebellion against victimhood. It's a declaration that you are not just a receiver of pain, you are a sculptor of meaning. And the raw material is everything that life gives you, even the unwanted parts. What would happen if you loved not just your triumphs, but your trials? Not just your blessings, but your breakdowns? That is the secret to a deep, conscious life. Tell us in the comments, what part of your fate are you learning to love today? What pain are you finally seeing as part of your soul's tapestry? Topic 5, The Abyss Within. Facing the darkness without losing yourself. Nietzsche wrote, "When you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." This enigmatic phrase speaks to the courage to confront one's inner darkness, the fears, traumas, destructive impulses, and uncomfortable truths we avoid. But this confrontation is essential for real self-knowledge. We all carry a dark side. Most prefer to repress it, mask it with virtues or distractions. But Nietzsche believed that only by looking this abyss in the face could we integrate everything we are. Running away from the dark only makes you stronger. Facing it with awareness is the beginning of transformation. The abyss represents everything you deny in yourself, your unexpressed anger, your silent envy, your fear of failure, your desire for control or validation. It's uncomfortable to admit this, but it is in this discomfort that the rawest truth of the human soul lives. And as paradoxical as it may seem, this plunge into the dark does not destroy you. What destroys you is denial. When you allow yourself to feel what needs to be felt, you stop carrying unconscious shadows and start living with lucidity and inner freedom. Nietzsche didn't tell you to get lost in the abyss, but to observe it with inner strength. If you dive without structure, the abyss swallows you. But if you dive in with awareness, it becomes a powerful mirror. It is in the abyss that you discover which parts of you need to be healed, which wounds still bleed, and which truths you were avoiding. This is where true self-control is born, not over the external world, but over your own psyche. Facing the abyss is a rite of passage. That's when you stop looking for someone to blame and start taking responsibility for your own soul. This is when you stop being a victim of your story and become its author. This process can be scary, but it is also liberating. Because the more you know your shadow, the more you shine your light. And that creates a whole human being, not just a socially acceptable one. Nietzsche teaches us that true greatness is not in appearing perfect, but in becoming whole. And this is only possible when you accept even what seemed unforgivable within yourself. Ask yourself, which part of you still can't look at? What do you fear that others will find out about you, and that perhaps you yourself still avoid facing? Tópico 6. The birth of the Übermensch, transcending pain and redefining humanity. One of Nietzsche's most powerful concepts is the Superman, the beyond man, the one who transcends the limits of inherited morality and creates his own values. And this figure is not born in comfort, but in confrontation with chaos, with pain, with inner rupture. The Übermensch represents the human being who has learned to transform suffering into wisdom, pain into direction, and crisis into creation. It is the result of an alchemical process where each wound turns into strength and each defeat turns into a vision. Nietzsche believed that humanity, as we know it, was trapped in moral standards that weaken the spirit. For him, a true human being should be one who, even when injured, is capable of reinventing himself, not based on doctrines, but on an unbreakable will to become something greater. This transformation begins with pain. Because before you can become what you can be, you need to destroy what was never real. You need to give up what you were given as absolute truth, and forge your own philosophy of life. The Übermensch is not arrogant, he is principled. He does not seek to dominate others, but to surpass himself. He is the symbol of the human possibility of being reborn, even after losing everything. And this only happens at rock bottom, when everything falls apart and only the essence remains. Nietzsche saw this process as a cycle. First, the spirit is a camel, which carries the burden imposed by the world. Then, he becomes a lion, which rebels against this burden. And finally, he becomes a child, a symbol of free creation, authentic reinvention, the lightness that only comes after pain. This cycle shows that pain has a purpose. Suffering is not the end, but a bridge. The journey is tough, but the destination is the freedom to be yourself without ties, without fear, and without mask. The idea of the Übermensch is also an invitation to radical responsibility. Because if you no longer need to hide behind ready-made values, then you need to create your own. And that requires courage, awareness, and pain, a lot of pain. But it is this pain that purifies. It is what disarms the superficial ego and reveals the indomitable spirit that lives within you. The Übermensch is not a superhero, but a deeply human being who has accepted pain as part of evolution. Are you ready to become this? Are you willing to step outside of normativity, comfort, repetition, to create a life with true purpose, even if it hurts? Leave it in the comments. What does it mean for you to transcend pain? And what values do you want to create from your own journey? Tópico 7, the eternal return. Would you live this pain again? Among Nietzsche's most provocative concepts is the eternal return, the idea that the life you live now will be repeated forever, in exactly the same way, with the same moments, pains, and joys. And the big question he asks is, would you say yes to living this exact life again, forever? This thought is not a metaphysical belief, but an ethical and spiritual provocation. Nietzsche uses it as a test of authenticity and courage. If you are not living a life that you would eternally say yes to, then perhaps you are living disconnected from your truth. Now imagine this deeply. All the pain you have gone through, all the suffering, all the falls, repeated forever. If this scares you, it's because there are still parts of your life that you reject. And Nietzsche invites us to transform these parts until we can fully accept them. The goal is not to have a life without pain, but a life so meaningful that even the pain makes sense. A life where even suffering is seen as part of your inner legacy. A life in which you say, yes, I would live all this again because it shaped me. Eternal return forces us to review our choices, our automatic behaviors, our attachments, and even our silences. It forces us to ask, if this were forever, would I keep this attitude, this routine, this relationship, this fear? Nietzsche is, in fact, proposing a level of presence and intentionality so profound that every second of life becomes sacred. Because if everything were repeated, then every gesture should have eternal value. And that changes everything. Imagine applying this thought today. Would you continue in this work? Loving this person? Denying this dream? Ignoring this pain? Or would you change right now so that your life would be worth repeating forever? Pain, in this context, stops being a mistake to avoid and becomes an element to understand and transform. If she's going to repeat herself, you better understand what she's trying to say. You better make it part of your great work and not just a hidden burden. This idea also brings a sense of urgency. Life is happening now. And if this moment came back 1,000 times, how would you like to live it? How would you like to remember him, even forever? Eternal return teaches us that life is not to be endured, but to be celebrated, even at its most bitter. Because, in the end, what forms us is not easy pleasure, but deep meaning. So I invite you to reflect. If your pain today came back infinitely, would you give it a new meaning, or would you just continue trying to escape it? Write in the comments, what pain in your life deserves a new meaning? What moment, however painful, do you now view with gratitude? Topic 8 From Suffering to Creation, Turning Pain into Art, Meaning, and Legacy. Nietzsche did not only see pain as an internal process of transformation, but also as a creative force capable of giving rise to great works, revolutionary ideas, and eternal legacies. For him, the greatest creators of humanity were also those who knew how to suffer the most, and transform that suffering into art, philosophy, music, poetry, and action. Unexpressed pain accumulates. It sickens the body, numbs the spirit, and empties the soul. But pain that is expressed with awareness becomes beauty, impact, and freedom. Nietzsche believed that the creative spirit is born in chaos. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. This inner chaos, this storm that rages within you, does not need to be silenced. It can be sculpted. It can become poetry, it can become dance, it can become social change, it can become an intimate revolution. Pain needs to find a channel. And creation is this sublime channel. Art, according to Nietzsche, is a form of sublimation of pain. The artist does not run away from suffering. He translates it. He gives form to the formless. He communicates the invisible. He transforms the unnameable into language. And in doing so, he heals not only himself, but everyone who connects with his work. You don't have to be an artist in the classical sense. Creating is a state of mind. It's transforming pain into ideas, into projects, into words that inspire. It is transmuting losses into purposes, tears into books, silences into music, defeats into teachings. Nietzsche saw this creative impulse as a vital force. When life hurts you, you can bleed or you can write with that blood. You can cry or you can water seeds with your tears. This is the alchemy of the soul, making pain a bridge to the sublime. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" start asking, "What can I create from this?" This shift in perspective gives you your power back. Pain no longer paralyzes you, it provokes you to build something greater. How many people have changed the world because they went through something unbearable? How many movements were born out of desperation? How many books have been written with words plucked from the abyss? Nietzsche saw creation as the highest response to suffering. Creating is rebelling against the void. It's responding to pain with beauty. It's refusing to be just an echo of the tragedy and deciding to be a seed of transformation. And that power is within you, waiting to be accessed. Pain can be the end, or it can be the beginning of your masterpiece. You decide whether it will be a scar or a signature, whether it will be silence or symphony, whether it will be trauma or testimony. And now think, what pain of yours has not yet been channeled into creation? What can you build, express, or share that honors everything you have overcome? Write in the comments, What was your greatest pain, and what did it inspire you to create? Pain is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of your masterpiece. Through Nietzsche's wisdom, we've explored how suffering is not just a phase to endure, but a force to transform. A forge where your spirit is tempered, your values are redefined, and your deepest truth is awakened. Every scar tells a story. Every wound holds wisdom. Every fall prepares the rise. Now you know, your pain has purpose. It's not just a personal burden, it's a raw material for creation. Whether through art, writing, movement, healing, or simply by living more consciously, your suffering can become something sacred. Nietzsche didn't just teach philosophy. He handed us tools to turn chaos into meaning and agony into legacy. If this message resonated with your soul, click that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And before you go, leave a comment. What pain in your life do you feel is calling you to create something new? Your voice might be the spark for someone else's transformation.